The asteroid belt around Proxima Centauri looked peaceful in the morning light of the distant red star. Dr. Kim Tae-ho floated near the observation window of his research ship, watching chunks of rock drift past like slow-moving mountains. He had been studying these space rocks for 3 months now, looking for rare minerals that Earth needed for its growing space colonies. Tae-ho loved his work. At 35, he was one of Earth's best rock scientists. His ship, the New Soul, was small but packed with the latest scanning equipment. He could analyze any mineral from a distance and tell exactly what it was made of. Today felt like any other day of peaceful research. Computer. Scan asteroid number 247, he said, pointing at a large gray rock spinning slowly in the void. Scanning. Complete. The asteroid contains high levels of titanium and trace amounts of platinum, the ship's computer replied in its calm female voice. Tae-ho made notes on his tablet. This was good news. Platinum was very valuable and hard to find. Earth's colonies always needed more of it for their electronics and medical equipment. He marked the asteroid's location and prepared to move on to the next one. That's when everything changed. A strange blue light suddenly surrounded his ship. Tae-ho looked around in confusion as the light grew brighter and brighter. His instruments started going crazy, showing readings that made no sense. The computer began making warning sounds. Unknown energy field detected, the computer announced. Source unknown. Recommend immediate departure. But before Tae-ho could do anything, massive shapes appeared out of nowhere. Ships unlike anything he had ever seen materialized around him. They were huge, at least 10 times the size of his vessel. Their hulls looked like they were grown rather than built, with smooth curves and organic patterns that seemed to pulse with their own light. "This is Dr. Kim Tae-ho of the research vessel New Soul," he broadcast on all emergency frequencies. "Unknown ships, please identify yourselves. I am a peaceful scientist conducting mineral surveys." There was no answer. Instead, one of the alien ships moved closer. Tae-ho could see details now that made his blood run cold. The ship's surface was covered in what looked like scales, and strange symbols glowed along its sides. Weapon ports opened like hungry mouths. Tae-ho's hands flew over his control panel. He had to get away and warn Earth. These were clearly alien ships, and they didn't seem friendly. He started the engines and began to turn toward home. The aliens didn't let him leave. A beam of red energy shot from the nearest ship and hit the New Soul. Tae-ho was thrown against the wall as his ship shook violently. Sparks flew from damaged equipment, and the lights flickered. The computer's voice became distorted. "Hull breach in Section 3. Life support damaged. Engines offline." More energy beams hit his ship. Tae-ho realized with growing horror that they weren't trying to destroy him completely. They were disabling his ship piece by piece, like a cat playing with a mouse. They wanted him alive. He managed to reach the emergency communications panel and activated the distress beacon. A message would be sent automatically to Earth Defense. Command, telling them what happened. At least his people would know. The alien ships surrounded him completely now. One of them extended what looked like a metal tube toward his vessel. Tae-ho heard grinding sounds as the tube attached to his ship's airlock. They were coming aboard. He grabbed his sidearm, knowing it probably wouldn't help much against aliens, with such advanced technology. But he was human, and humans didn't give up without a fight. The airlock doors burst open with a loud crash. Smoke poured into his ship, making it hard to see. Through the haze, Tae-ho saw shapes moving toward him. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, and wore armor that seemed to be made of the same organic material as their ships. "Stay back!" Tae-ho shouted, raising his weapon. One of the aliens said something in a language that sounded like music mixed with the growling of wild animals. Another alien pointed a device at him. A wave of tiredness washed over Tae-ho, and his gun fell from his numb fingers. As he collapsed to the floor, Unable to move, he got his first clear look at his captors. They had pale blue skin and eyes that glowed with inner light. Their faces were angular, almost elegant, but their expressions were cold and proud. They looked at him the way a scientist might look at an interesting insect. One alien, who seemed to be their leader based on the extra symbols on his armor, knelt down next to Tae-ho. When he spoke, a device on his chest translated his words into English. "You are now a prisoner of the Velthari Empire, human. Your primitive species has spread too far into space that belongs to us. You will provide information about your world's defenses." Tae-ho tried to speak, but could only manage a whisper. You don't understand. If you hurt me, my people will come looking." The alien leader made a sound that might have been laughter. "One insignificant creature? Your people will forget you exist. We have conquered 17 star systems. We know how lesser species think." Two other aliens lifted Tae-ho and carried him toward their ship. As they took him through the connecting tube, he could see the new Sol through a small window. The research vessel that had been his home for months was now a broken shell, drifting powerless in space. Inside the alien ship, everything was strange and unsettling. The walls curved in impossible ways, and the air tasted different. Lights pulsed in patterns that hurt to look at. The aliens carried him through corridors filled with other creatures he didn't recognize. Prisoners from other worlds, he realized. They put him in a small cell with walls that seemed to be alive. The surface rippled when he touched it, and he could swear he heard something like a heartbeat coming from deep inside the ship. Hours passed, or maybe days. It was impossible to tell time in this place. Tae-ho sat on the floor of his cell and thought about Earth. He thought about his family, his friends, his colleagues. He wondered if anyone would ever know what happened to him. The alien leader visited him once. Through the translator, he told Tae-ho that his name was Commander Velthak, and that he served the glorious Velthari Empire. He seemed genuinely puzzled when Tae-ho refused to provide information about Earth's military. "Your loyalty is misplaced," Velthak said. "Your leaders will not waste resources searching for one lost scientist. Accept your fate." But Tae-ho just smiled even though he was scared. "You really don't know humans at all, do you?" As the alien ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, carrying him away from everything he knew, Tae-ho held on to one thought. Somewhere behind them, his distress beacon was still broadcasting. Earth would know what happened. And if there was, one thing humans never did, it was abandon their own. The Velthari had just made the biggest mistake in their empire's history. They just didn't know it yet. Admiral Park Ji-woo was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency alert came through. The red lights in his office on Luna Base started flashing, and his computer screen filled with urgent messages. He set down his cup and immediately switched to crisis mode. "Admiral, we have a code red situation," said his aide, Lieutenant Yu Da-eun, as she rushed into his office. "The research vessel New Sol has missed 3 scheduled check-ins. Her distress beacon activated 4 hours ago." Park felt his stomach tighten. In space, missed check-ins usually meant someone was dead. Where was Dr. Kim Tae-ho's last known position? "Proxima Centauri asteroid belt, sir. Long-range sensors detected an explosion at his coordinates." The Admiral stood up quickly. "Get me Captain No Sung Min and the stealth recon team. I want ships out there now." Within 2 hours, Captain No's ship, the Ghost of Busan, was speeding toward Proxima Centauri. It was humanity's most advanced stealth vessel, designed to be invisible to almost any sensor. If there was danger in that asteroid belt, No would find it without being detected. Meanwhile, back on Luna Base, Park assembled his best analysts. The debris field from the New Sol told a disturbing story. The ship hadn't exploded from an accident or equipment failure. Someone had destroyed it deliberately. "Admiral, look at these energy readings," said Dr. Song Hae-young, the base's chief scientist. She pointed at strange patterns on her screen. These weapons signatures don't match anything in our database. The energy output is enormous, far beyond what any human ship can produce. Park studied the data with growing concern. How far beyond? At least 500 years ahead of our technology, maybe more. Sir, I don't think humans did this. The room went very quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. For over a century, humans had been exploring space and finding nothing but empty worlds and dead civilizations. They had begun to think they were alone in the universe. Apparently, they were wrong. "Have we heard anything from Dr. Kim?" Park asked. Lieutenant Yu checked her messages. "His emergency beacon is still broadcasting, but it's moving. Whatever took him is carrying the beacon away from the attack site." Park made a quick decision. "Get me President Choi Hee-jin on secure communication, and wake up Dr. Lee Min-jun. We need our best alien expert." Dr. Lee Min-jun had spent his whole career studying what humans might do if they ever met aliens. He had written dozens of papers about first contact scenarios, most of which assumed the aliens would be peaceful. As he hurried to Luna Base in the middle of the night, he realized all his theories were about to be tested in the worst possible way. "Based on the evidence, we're dealing with a species that's significantly more advanced than us," Lee told the emergency council that Park had assembled. "The fact that they disabled Dr. Kim's ship instead of destroying it completely suggests they wanted him alive." President Choi Hye-jin appeared on the main screen from her office in Geneva. Even at 3 in the morning, she looked alert and ready for business. "Dr. Lee, what are the chances this was a peaceful misunderstanding?" "Very low, Madam President. They destroyed his ship and took him prisoner. This appears to be a deliberate act of aggression." "Could they be studying us?" asked Admiral Park. "Possibly. If I were an advanced alien species that discovered humans, I might capture one to learn about our capabilities and intentions. The problem is, they clearly don't understand how humans will react to this." The president leaned forward. "Explain. Most animal species will sacrifice individuals to protect the group. Even many human societies throughout history have accepted that some people are expendable. But modern human civilization has developed a very different value system. We believe every human life has infinite worth." Captain No's voice suddenly came through the communication system from his ship near Proxima Centauri. "Admiral, you need to see this. I'm sending video now." The screens around the room filled with images from the asteroid belt. The wreckage of the new Sol drifted among the rocks, but that wasn't what made everyone gasp. Strange scorch marks covered several asteroids, and one large rock had been completely vaporized, leaving only glowing particles. "Sir, these energy signatures are unlike anything we've ever seen," No reported. "Whatever attacked Dr. Kim's ship has weapons that can destroy matter at the atomic level. The aliens also left something behind." "What kind of something?" "A message, sir. It's being broadcast on several frequencies in broken English. I'm playing it now." A harsh, musical voice filled the room, speaking words that chilled everyone's. "Blood. Primitive humans. Your expansion into space ends now. We are the Velthari Empire, rulers of 17 star systems. Your species has trespassed into territory that belongs to us. We have taken one of your kind to study. Consider this a warning. Return to your small world and stay there, or face the consequences." The room erupted in angry voices, but President Choi raised her hand for silence. "Admiral Park, what are our options?" "We can try diplomacy, or we can prepare for war. And if we choose diplomacy," Dr. Lee spoke up. "Madam President, based on their message and actions, I don't think they're interested in negotiation. They see us as inferior beings who should submit to their authority." President Choi was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was cold and determined. "Gentlemen, let me be very clear about something. The Velthari Empire has made a fundamental error in judgment. They think they can take one of our people and we'll just accept it. Admiral Park nodded grimly. What are your orders, Madam President? Dr. Kim Tae-ho is a citizen of Earth and a member of the human family. We don't leave our family behind, no matter what it costs. Admiral, I want you to mobilize the entire defense fleet. The entire fleet, ma'am? That's over 40,000 ships. You heard me correctly. And activate all reserve vessels. Contact our colonies and tell them we need every ship that can carry weapons. Dr. Lee, prepare a response message to these Velthari. What should it say? The president's expression was like ice. Tell them they have 72 hours to return Dr. Kim unharmed. If they refuse, we will consider it an act of war against the entire human species. Dr. Lee looked worried. Madam President, they're clearly more advanced than us. Threatening them might be... Doctor, let me explain something about human nature that your alien studies might have missed. We are not a species that responds well to bullying. We don't abandon our people. And we definitely don't back down from a fight, even when we're outgunned. Admiral Park felt a familiar feeling rising in his chest. It was the same feeling his ancestors had when enemies threatened their homes. Ma'am, what if they destroy our fleet? Then we'll build another one, and another one after that. We'll keep fighting until either Dr. Kim comes home or there are no more humans left to fight. That's who we are. As the emergency session ended and orders went out across human space, a massive mobilization began. Shipyards that had been building peaceful exploration vessels suddenly switched to war production. Civilian ships reported to military bases for weapon installation. Colony militias activated and prepared for battle. The Velthari had expected humans to be like every other species they had conquered, willing to sacrifice individuals for the survival of the group. They had no idea they had just threatened the one species in the galaxy that would burn down the universe before abandoning a single member of their family. In the asteroid belt near Proxima Centauri, Captain No watched alien energy signatures disappearing into deep space. Somewhere out there, Dr. Kim Tae-ho was being carried away from everything he knew. But he wasn't alone. An entire species was coming to bring him home. The Velthari Empire was about to learn what happened when you took something that belonged to humanity. The Velthari flagship Dominion's Edge was a massive vessel that could hold an entire human city. Dr. Kim Tae-ho was taken to a chamber deep inside the ship, where strange lights pulsed in the walls and the air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. He had been a prisoner for 2 days now, and the aliens were getting frustrated with him. High Inquisitor Ralthek stood over Tae-ho, who was strapped to a chair that seemed to be grown from the ship's living hull. The alien was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and eyes that glowed like stars. His voice was musical but cold when he spoke through the translation device. You continue to resist our mental probes, human. This is unusual. Most species break within hours. Tae-ho managed a weak smile despite his exhaustion. Maybe you're not as good at this as you think. Ralthek's eyes flashed with anger. I have broken the minds of creatures from a dozen worlds. Your primitive brain should offer no challenge. But the truth was, human minds were different from anything the Velthari had encountered. Their psychic abilities, which could easily tear apart. The thoughts of other species barely scratched the surface of human consciousness. There was something about the way human brains worked that made them naturally resistant to mental invasion. Tell me about your world's defenses, Ralthek demanded. How many ships do you have? What are your weapons capabilities? I'm a rock scientist, Tae-ho replied. I study minerals. I don't know anything about military secrets. This was partly true. Tae-ho really was a scientist, and he didn't have access to classified defense information. But even if he had known every human military secret, he wouldn't have told these aliens anything. The idea of betraying his species was unthinkable. Your loyalty is misplaced, Ralthek said, walking around the chair in a slow circle. Your leaders will not risk war for one insignificant individual. No rational species would. You keep saying that, but I don't think you understand humans very well. We understand all inferior species. They value survival over sentiment. When faced with superior force, they submit. It is the natural order. Tejo laughed, which seemed to confuse the alien. Natural order? You really don't get it, do you? Humans don't have a natural order. We make our own rules. Over the past 2 days, Tejo had tried to explain human nature to his captors, but they couldn't grasp what he was telling them. The Velthari Empire was built on the idea that strong individuals led and weak ones followed. They saw the universe as a hierarchy where everyone knew their place. Let me tell you a story, Tejo said. A few years ago, a human mining ship got trapped in a collapsing asteroid field near Alpha Centauri. The crew was 5 people, and saving them would have cost billions of dollars and put hundreds of rescuers at risk. And your leaders abandoned them, proving my point. No, they didn't. Earth sent 40 ships and 2,000 volunteers. We spent 8 months moving asteroids and rebuilding space itself to get those 5 people out. The rescue cost more than some planets make in a year. Ralthek stared at him. That is inefficient. That's human. The door to the chamber opened, and Commander Veltak entered. He was the military leader who had captured Tejo, and he looked worried about something. He spoke to Ralthek in their musical language, and Tejo could see the Inquisitor's expression change. "What is it?" Tejo asked. Velthak turned to him with what might have been amusement. "Your species has responded to our message. They demand your return." "And?" "We told them that you belong to the Empire now. One creature is not worth a war." Tejo felt his heart skip. "What did they say to that?" The 2 aliens exchanged glances. Ralthek answered. "They said that if you are not returned within 72 hours, they will consider it an act of war against the entire human species." "Told you so." "They are bluffing," Velthak said firmly. "We have 17 star systems under our control. Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs. No rational species would fight a war they cannot win." "How many ships do you think they'll send?" Tejo asked quietly. "Perhaps a few dozen. Enough to make a gesture, but not enough to threaten us." "Seriously," Tejo shook his head. "Try again. A few hundred at most." "Even that would be wasteful for such a small matter." "You're still thinking too small." Ralthek leaned forward, curious despite himself. "How many ships do you think your leaders will send to retrieve one insignificant scientist?" "All of them." The aliens stared at him in silence. Finally, Velthak made that sound that might have been laughter. "Impossible. No species commits everything for one individual." "Want to bet?" Several hours later, the first reports started coming in from the edge of Velthari space. Their long-range sensors were detecting massive energy signatures moving toward, their territory. At first, the readings seemed impossible. "How many ships?" Emperor Zulthax asked from his throne on the capital world. Fleet Admiral Tekvos checked his reports again, hoping he had made a mistake. "Your Imperial Majesty, our sensors show at least 40,000 vessels approaching our borders." 40,000? Are you certain? "The numbers keep growing, sire. It appears to be every ship the humans possess." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Around his throne, advisors whispered nervously among themselves. No species in the galaxy had ever mobilized their entire civilization for one prisoner. "This must be some kind of trick," the Emperor finally said. "Perhaps they are using false sensor readings to make their fleet appear larger." "Sire, we've confirmed the readings from multiple sources. The humans have mobilized everything that can fly. Military ships, civilian vessels, cargo haulers, even pleasure craft. They're all armed and heading our way." Aboard the Dominion's Edge, Veltek received the same reports. He found himself back in the interrogation chamber staring at the human prisoner with new eyes. "Your people are insane," he said. "No, we're human. There's a difference. You would risk your entire species for one individual? In a heartbeat. But why? What makes one life worth so much? Tejo looked at the alien commander with something that might have been pity. Because if one human life doesn't matter, then no human life matters. And if no human life matters, then we're not really human anymore, are we? Velthak struggled to understand. In Velthari society, individuals existed to serve the Empire. The idea that the Empire might exist to serve individuals was incomprehensible. This is not rational behavior. Rationality is overrated. Your fleet will be destroyed. We have weapons you cannot imagine. Maybe. But there are 40,000 ships out there, and more coming. How many of us do you think you can kill before we reach you? All of them, if necessary. Tejo smiled sadly. Then you'll have to kill all of us, because we won't stop coming. Ever. The truth was starting to dawn on the Velthari leadership. They had expected a small rescue mission, maybe a diplomatic protest. Instead, they were facing the largest military mobilization in galactic history. An entire species was coming to war over the capture of one scientist. "Sir," one of Velthak's officers reported, "our deep space sensors show more human ships jumping into our territory every hour. They're not staying together in one fleet. They're spreading out, attacking our outer colonies." Impossible. No species fights that way. But humans did fight that way. They weren't following traditional military doctrine. Instead of massing their forces for one big battle, they were hitting Velthari targets everywhere at once. Mining stations, supply depots, communication relays, anything with the Velthari flag was suddenly under attack by vessels that shouldn't have been able to reach them. In his cell, Tejo could feel the ship shuddering as it went to maximum speed. The Velthari were running, trying to reach the safety of their inner territories. But there was no safety anymore. Humanity had declared war on an entire empire, and they were fighting like a species that had nothing left to lose. Because they didn't. They had lost one of their own, and that was everything. The news spread across human space faster than light itself. On every world, in every space station, in every mining colony and research outpost, the message was the same. Aliens had taken one of their own. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Admiral Park Ji-woo stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching reports flood in from across human territory. What he saw both amazed and terrified him. Humanity was mobilizing for war on a scale that had never been seen before. Admiral, the Colonial. "Governments are reporting full compliance," said Lieutenant Yu Da-yoon, reading from her tablet. "New Shanghai is sending their entire merchant fleet. The Mars colonies have converted their ore haulers into weapons platforms. Even the agricultural worlds are arming their crop dusters." "What about the civilian volunteers?" "Sir, we've had to stop taking applications. Over 2 million people have volunteered for combat duty in the past 24 hours. Dr. Yang Subin, head of Earth's weapons development program, rushed into the command center carrying a secured briefcase. She looked exhausted, but excited. "Admiral, the Defense Council has authorized me to release the experimental weapons." Park felt his stomach drop. The experimental weapons were technologies so dangerous that they had never been tested in combat. Some of them were so destructive that even building them was considered morally questionable. All of them? Everything. The quantum destabilizers, the matter conversion bombs, the stellar manipulation devices. If we're going to war against a superior alien species, we need every advantage we can get. "And the planet killers?" Dr. Yang nodded grimly. "Construction began this morning. We'll have 5 of them ready within the week." The planet killer class dreadnoughts were humanity's most feared theoretical weapons. They were ships the size of small moons, designed to crack worlds in half with a single shot. The plans had existed for decades, but no one had ever been crazy enough to actually build one. Until now. On the agricultural world of New Eden, Captain Han Bo-Ra was loading weapons onto grain ships that had never fired a shot in anger. Farmers and agricultural workers lined up to volunteer for military service, bringing whatever vehicles and equipment they could spare. "Ma'am, are you sure about this?" asked her second-in-command, looking at the modified farming equipment they were calling weapons. These crop dusters weren't designed for space combat. Neither were the fishing boats at Dunkirk, Han replied, referencing an ancient Earth battle. But they got the job done. She looked out at the volunteers, men and women who had spent their lives growing food, not fighting wars, but their faces showed the same determination she had seen in professional soldiers. Someone had taken one of their own, and that was unacceptable. Besides, she added, we're not planning to fight fair. In the asteroid shipyards around Ceres, Colonel Lim Jae-sung was overseeing the production of humanity's newest weapon, AI-controlled fighter drones that could think and fight, without human pilots. The technology had been banned for years because it was considered too dangerous, but desperate times called for desperate measures. "How many can we produce?" he asked the chief engineer. "At current production rates, about 1,000 per day. But Colonel, I have to warn you, these AIs are designed to be absolutely ruthless. Once we activate them, they'll attack anything that isn't human." Good. That's exactly what we want. The truth was, humanity had been preparing for interstellar war for decades without realizing it. All the technologies they had developed for peaceful space exploration could be turned into weapons. Mining lasers became ship killers. Asteroid tugs became missile platforms. Even civilian communication networks were repurposed to coordinate military operations. But the most important change wasn't technological. It was psychological. The capture of Dr. Kim Tae-ho had done something to the human psyche that no enemy had ever managed before. It had unified them completely. On Earth, President Choi Hye-jin addressed the world from the United Nations building. Her speech was broadcast to every human settlement in the galaxy. "My fellow humans, 3 days ago, aliens calling themselves the Velthari Empire attacked one of our research vessels and captured Dr. Kim Tae-ho. They demanded that we stay in our place and accept their authority over human space." She paused, letting the words sink in. "I have a message for the Velthari Empire. You have made a fundamental error in judgment. You think you can take one of our people and we will submit to your authority. You think we are like other species you have conquered, willing to sacrifice individuals for the survival of the group." The president's voice grew harder. "You are wrong. We are human. We don't abandon our own. We don't submit to bullies. And we don't accept that any life is expendable. Dr. Kim Tae-ho is a citizen of Earth and a member of the human family. We will bring him home, no matter what it costs us." Across human space, the response was immediate. Shipyards worked around the clock. Volunteers trained for combat. Scientists developed new weapons. Every human settlement contributed something to the war effort. Commander Ryu Woo-jin was typical of the volunteers. He had been the captain of a luxury passenger liner, taking tourists on scenic trips through the outer colonies. When the call came for volunteers, he immediately converted his ship into a fast attack vessel. "Sir, the passengers won't like having military weapons installed," his first officer warned. "We don't have passengers anymore," Ryu replied. "We have a crew of volunteers, and we're going to war." His ship, the Peaceful Journey, became the Righteous Fury overnight. The luxury cabins were stripped out and replaced with weapon systems. The observation decks became fighter launch bays. The restaurant became an armory. Similar transformations were happening throughout human space. Cruise ships became carriers, cargo vessels became destroyers, research stations became weapons factories. In less than a week, humanity had transformed from a peaceful exploration society into a war machine. The aliens had no idea what they had awakened. Dr. Seo Ji-hai, head of Earth's Psychological Warfare Division, was preparing humanity's response to the Velthari demands. Her team had studied every piece of alien communication they could find, looking for weaknesses. "What have you learned about their psychology?" Admiral Park asked during a strategy meeting. "They're hierarchical, proud, and they believe in the natural superiority of strength," Dr. Seo replied. "They can't understand why we would risk everything for one individual. To them, it seems insane. How do we use that? We show them exactly how insane we can be." The human fleet that assembled at the edge of Velthari space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 40,000 ships of every size and design, from massive military dreadnoughts to tiny civilian shuttles armed with mining explosives. They didn't follow traditional formation patterns or military doctrine. They moved like a swarm, unpredictable and impossible to counter. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul's Pride, and looked out at the assembled fleet. Every ship represented families willing to risk everything to bring home one scientist they had never met. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Velthari Empire," his communications officer reported. "Let's hear it." The same musical, arrogant voice that had delivered the original demands now sounded less confident. "Human fleet, you are trespassing in territory controlled by the Velthari Empire. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Park picked up the communication microphone. His response was broadcast not just to the aliens, but to every human, ship in the fleet, and every human settlement in the galaxy. "This is Admiral Park Ji-woo of the Earth Defense Force. We have one simple demand. Return Dr. Kim Tae-ho unharmed. Do this, and we will withdraw. Refuse, and we will tear your empire apart piece by piece until we find him. You cannot threaten the mighty Velthari Empire with your primitive—" Park cut off the transmission and opened a channel to his fleet. "All ships, you have your orders. Find Dr. Kim and bring him home. Everything else is secondary." The human fleet crossed into Velthari space like a wave of destruction. They weren't coming to conquer or negotiate. They were coming for one of their own, and nothing in the universe was going to stop them. The first battle took place in the Kethvar system, a minor Velthari mining colony on the edge of their empire. The aliens had expected the humans to attack their military bases or major worlds. Instead, the human fleet split into hundreds of smaller groups and began hitting everything at once. Fleet Admiral Tekvos commanded the Velthari defense from his flagship, watching in disbelief as human ships swarmed through his territory like angry insects. These weren't the careful, organized attacks he had expected from a military force. This was something else entirely. "Admiral, they're attacking our mining stations, communication relays, and supply depots simultaneously," his tactical officer reported. "We can't defend everything at once. Focus our forces on protecting the major worlds," Tekvos ordered. "Let them waste their time on meaningless targets." But the human attacks weren't meaningless. Every facility they destroyed was chosen carefully to maximize the psychological impact on the Velthari. They were showing the aliens that nowhere in their empire was safe. Commander Ryu Woo-jin led one of these attack groups with his converted passenger liner, the Righteous Fury. His target was a small orbital platform that processed minerals from the Kethvar asteroid belt. It should have been an easy victory for the defending Velthari ships. "Sir, we're detecting 3 enemy vessels approaching our position," his sensor operator reported. "They're much larger than us, with superior weapons." "Good," Ryu replied calmly. "That means they think they can win." The Velthari ships opened fire first, their energy weapons striking the human vessel's improvised armor. The Righteous Fury shook violently but kept flying toward its target. "Sir, we've lost forward shields and the port engine is damaged," his first officer reported. "Ram them." "Sir?" "You heard me. All power to engines. We're going to ram the nearest enemy ship." This was not something the Velthari expected. In their military doctrine, ships retreated when heavily damaged. They didn't accelerate toward the enemy at maximum speed. The closest alien vessel tried to maneuver away, but it was too late. The righteous fury struck the Velthari ship at nearly full speed, tearing through its elegant hull like a bullet through paper. Both ships exploded in a burst of light and debris, but the message was clear. Humans would trade their lives without hesitation to hurt their enemies. Similar scenes played out across the HFY system. Human ships that should have retreated when damaged instead fought to the death. Civilian vessels with improvised weapons charged military targets that outgunned them 10-1. Agricultural equipment modified for combat somehow managed to destroy alien warships. The Velthari had never faced an enemy like this. Their wars had always been fought according to civilized rules. Fleets met in open space, the stronger side won, and the weaker side surrendered. But humans didn't follow these rules. Admiral, the humans are using kamikaze tactics throughout the system, the tactical officer reported to Thekvos. They're sacrificing their ships to destroy our infrastructure. How many ships have they lost? Over 300, sir. But they've destroyed twice that number of our facilities. Thekvos couldn't understand it. No rational species would accept such losses for such small gains. What are they trying to accomplish? His question was answered when the humans broadcast. A message on all frequencies. Admiral Park's voice reached every Velthari ship and station in the system. People of the Velthari Empire, we are not here to conquer your worlds or enslave your people. We want one thing, the return of Dr. Kim. Tae-ho, every facility we destroy, every ship we sink, every life we take. It's all because you refuse to return one human scientist. The message continued with cold precision. This is what happens when you take something that belongs to humanity. We will burn down your entire civilization to get back one of our own. Return Dr. Kim, and this stops. Keep him, and we will destroy everything you have ever built. On the Velthari capital world, Emperor Zulthax watched reports of the battle with growing unease. His military advisors insisted that the human fleet would eventually run out of ships and give up. But the humans kept coming, and their tactics were becoming more extreme. Your Imperial Majesty, they're now using stellar manipulation technology, reported his science advisor, her voice shaking with fear. What do you mean? They've positioned ships around the HFY star and are using some kind of device to destabilize. It's nuclear reactions. They're threatening to turn it into a nova. The Emperor stared at the report in disbelief. They would destroy an entire star system? The threat appears to be real, sire. Our scientists confirmed that their technology could cause the star to explode within days. This was beyond anything the Velthari had imagined. The HFY system contained millions of their people. The idea that anyone would threaten to commit genocide over one prisoner was incomprehensible. Emperor Zulthax opened a communication channel to the human fleet. His image appeared on screens throughout the system, his face showing the strain of command. Human Admiral, I am Emperor Zulthax of the Velthari Empire. Your threats are meaningless. We do not negotiate with terrorists. Admiral Park's response was immediate and chilling. Your Imperial Majesty, we're not terrorists. We're a rescue mission, and we're not negotiating. We're giving you a choice. Return our citizen or watch your empire burn. You would murder millions of innocent civilians? You murdered one innocent scientist. The math is simple. This is insane. No civilized species would... We're not civilized, Park interrupted. We're human. There's a difference. The communication ended, leaving the Emperor staring at a blank screen. Around him, his advisors argued frantically about their options. Some wanted to return the human prisoner immediately. Others insisted that giving in to human demands would show weakness to other species. But while they argued, the human fleet continued its work. The devices around the HFY star were already affecting its nuclear reactions. Solar flares erupted, from its surface, sending deadly radiation throughout the system. The Velthari had perhaps days before the star would explode. On the flagship Dominion's edge, High Inquisitor Ralthek visited Dr. Kim Tae-ho in his cell. The alien looked shaken by what was happening. "Your people are threatening to destroy an entire star system," Ralthek said. "Millions will die." Tae-ho felt sick at the thought, but he understood the logic. "They're not doing it to kill your people. They're doing it to get me back." The result is the same. No, it isn't. If you return me now, they'll leave peacefully. The choice is yours. This is madness. This is humanity. Ralthek struggled to understand. But why? What makes one life worth so much destruction? Tae-ho had been thinking about this question for days. Because if my life doesn't matter, then no human life matters. And if no human life matters, then we're not really human anymore. Your species would destroy itself to save one individual? If necessary. The alien stared at him in silence. Finally, he spoke again. "What kind of creatures are you?" "We're the kind that never leave anyone behind." Throughout the Kethvar system, Velthari civilians were evacuating their worlds and stations as fast as possible. They had never seen anything like this human fleet, ships that fought like wild animals, tactics that made no sense, threats that seemed to come from nightmares. The humans weren't just fighting a war. They were making a statement to the entire galaxy. This is what happens when you mess with one of ours. In the distance, the star continued to destabilize. Time was running out for everyone in the system. The Velthari had to choose. Return one, human prisoner, or watch millions of their people die in the explosion of their own sun. The choice should have been obvious. But the Velthari were a proud species, and they had never backed down from a fight before. They couldn't understand that they weren't fighting a normal war. They were fighting humanity, and humanity fought differently than anyone else in the galaxy. The Velthari refused to yield. Even as their star grew unstable and their people fled the Kethvar system, Emperor Zulthax held firm to his position. He believed that if he gave in to human demands, other species would see the Velthari as weak. He couldn't have been more wrong about what was coming next. Admiral Park Ji-woo stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the evacuation ships flee from the dying star system. He felt no satisfaction in what they were about to do. But, the Velthari had forced his hand. "Admiral, all civilian vessels have cleared the danger zone," his tactical officer reported. "The star will go nova in approximately 6 hours. And our prisoner?" "Still no word from the aliens, sir." Park nodded grimly. "Then we proceed with Protocol Zero." Protocol Zero was humanity's most extreme military doctrine. It had been written years ago but never implemented. The basic principle was simple. If an enemy refused to return captured humans, then that enemy's entire civilization would be systematically destroyed until they changed their minds. "Sir, we're receiving emergency communications from the Velthari. Evacuation fleet," his communications officer announced. "They're begging us to stop the Nova. Put them through." The voice that came through the speakers was high and musical, clearly frightened. "Human ships, please. There are children on these evacuation transports. Innocent families. Stop this madness." Park's response was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every Velthari ship in the system could hear it. "Return Dr. Kim Tae-ho unharmed, and we will stabilize your star immediately." "We cannot. The decision must come from the Emperor himself. Then your Emperor is murdering his own people." The communication ended in static. 6 hours later, the E-eyed Kethvar star exploded in a burst of light that could be seen from neighboring systems. 3 worlds and dozens of space stations were vaporized instantly. The evacuation fleet had saved most of the civilian population, but the message was clear. Humanity would destroy entire star systems to get their people back. The news of Kethvar's destruction spread through Velthari space like wildfire. On the capital world, Emperor Zulthax faced angry crowds demanding that he return the human prisoner, but his pride wouldn't let him submit to what he saw as terrorist demands. "Your Imperial Majesty," his military advisor reported, "our intelligence suggests the humans have weapons capable of destroying planets without affecting their stars." "Impossible. Sir, we've analyzed the energy signatures from their fleet. They have devices that can break down matter at the quantum level. If they target a planet's core..." The Emperor didn't need to hear the rest. He understood the implications. If humans could destroy stars, they could certainly destroy planets. And unlike a nova, which gave time for evacuation, a quantum destabilizer would kill everyone on a world instantly. Dr. HFY, head of Earth's Psychological Warfare Division, had prepared humanity's next message carefully. It was broadcast simultaneously to every Velthari world, every news network, every communication system in their empire. "People of the Velthari Empire, my name is Dr. HFY. I represent the human species in matters of psychological warfare. Your emperor has been told repeatedly how to end this conflict. Return Dr. Kim Tae-ho unharmed. He has refused." The message continued with cold precision. "As a result, we must demonstrate the consequences of taking human prisoners. The agricultural world of Velthos Prime has been selected for our next demonstration. Velthos Prime was home to 30 billion Velthari civilians. It was one of their most important food-producing worlds, covered in vast farms and peaceful cities. The idea that anyone would target such a world was unthinkable. You have 24 hours to begin evacuation procedures. After that time, Velthos Prime will be destroyed completely. This is not a threat. This is a schedule." Panic spread through the Velthari Empire. Velthos Prime began the largest evacuation in their history, but 30 billion people couldn't be moved in one day. Transport ships from across the empire rushed to help, but everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. Emperor Zulthax called an emergency session of his ruling council. "We cannot allow this to happen." "Then return the human," advised his science minister. "If we submit to their demands, every species in the galaxy will see us as weak. If we don't submit, there won't be an empire left to worry about," his military advisor countered. But the emperor's pride was stronger than his wisdom. He believed that humans were bluffing, that no species would actually commit genocide over one prisoner. He ordered his fleets to defend Velthos Prime. The human attack came exactly 24 hours later. But it wasn't the massive space battle the Velthari expected. Instead, a single human ship appeared in orbit around Velthos Prime. It was small, unremarkable, and seemingly defenseless. One ship? Fleet Admiral Tekvos couldn't believe what his sensors were showing. They sent one ship to attack an entire world. But that one ship carried humanity's most terrible weapon, a quantum destabilizer. The device was small enough to fit in a cargo bay, but powerful enough to unravel the atomic structure of anything. It targeted Captain Kim So-young, commanded the ship carrying the destabilizer. She had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Her ship would have to get close to the planet to deploy the weapon, and the Velthari fleet would do everything possible to stop her. "Ma'am, we're detecting over 200 enemy ships moving to intercept," her tactical officer reported. "Understood. Begin final approach." The Velthari fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and missiles filled the space around Kim's ship. Her vessel's shields failed within minutes, and fires broke out across multiple decks. "Hull breach on levels 3 and 4, her engineer reported. "We're losing life support." "How long until we reach deployment range?" 6 minutes at current speed. "Then we'll make it." Kim's ship was falling apart around her, but she kept flying toward the planet. Her crew worked frantically to keep the engines running and the destabilizer operational. They all knew they were going to die, but they also knew that their sacrifice would send a message the galaxy would never forget. When her ship finally reached optimal range, Kim activated the quantum destabilizer herself. The device fired a beam of energy that looked almost harmless. just a thin line of light connecting the ship to the planet below. But the effect was devastating. The beam touched Velthos Prime's surface and began to spread like a disease. The planet's matter started to unravel at the quantum level, breaking down into component atoms that simply ceased to exist. Within minutes, the entire world was gone. Not destroyed, but erased from reality. 30 billion Velthari had died instantly, along with Kim and her crew, when their ship was caught in the expanding void. Where Velthos Prime had once orbited, there was now nothing but empty space. The psychological impact on the Velthari Empire was immediate and total. They had just watched an entire world disappear because their emperor refused to return one human prisoner. Riots broke out on dozens of worlds. Military commanders began openly questioning their orders. Dr. Seo's next broadcast was even more chilling than the first. This was for one human scientist. We have 4 more planet killers ready for deployment. The next target will be selected in 48 hours unless Dr. Kim Tae-ho is returned unharmed. She paused, letting the words sink in across the empire. Let us be clear about something. We are not trying to conquer your empire or steal your resources. We simply want our citizen back. Every death, every destroyed world, every act of destruction, it all stops the moment you return Dr. Kim. The choice is entirely yours. On the capital world, Emperor Zolthax watched his empire beginning to crumble. His advisors were openly talking about rebellion. His military commanders were refusing orders. His people were demanding that he end the war immediately. But still, his pride wouldn't let him submit. He couldn't understand that he wasn't fighting a normal war. He was fighting humanity's most fundamental value, that every human life was worth everything. In space near the ruins of Velthos Prime, human ships continued their grim work. They had turned humanity's sun into a weapon capable of destroying entire galaxies if their demands weren't met. They had shown they were willing to commit genocide to save one of their own. The Velthari Empire was learning what the rest of the galaxy would soon discover. Never take something that belongs to humanity. Because humans don't negotiate, they don't compromise, and they never ever give up on their own. The Velthari Empire was collapsing. After the destruction of Velthos Prime, panic spread through every system under their control. Military units abandoned their posts to evacuate their families. Civilian governments declared independence and begged humanity for protection. The proud empire that had once conquered 17 star systems was falling apart in a matter of days. Emperor Zulthax sat on his throne, watching reports flood in from across his territory. Each one brought worse news than the last. His empire was dying, and it was all because he wouldn't return one human prisoner. "Your Imperial Majesty," his aide reported with a trembling voice, "the Third Fleet has refused orders to engage the human forces. Admiral Kethvar says his crews won't fight for an empire that sacrifices entire worlds for pride. Execute him for treason," the Emperor replied automatically. "Sir, Admiral Kethvar has taken his entire fleet to the neutral zone. He's offering to surrender directly to the humans." This was the final insult. Not only were his people abandoning him, but they were actively joining the enemy. The Emperor stood up from his throne, his pale blue skin flushed with anger. "Prepare my personal fleet. If my commanders won't fight, I'll lead the battle myself." Hi. Admiral Tekvos, the Empire's most experienced military leader, tried one last time to change his emperor's mind. "Your Imperial Majesty, we cannot win this war. The humans have already proven they'll destroy anything to get their prisoner back. Please, for the sake of our people, return the human and end this madness." "Never. The Velthari Empire does not bow to inferior species." But even as the Emperor prepared for his final battle, the humans were demonstrating just how inferior they weren't. Their ships were appearing everywhere at once, using technology that seemed impossible. They had somehow broken the light speed barrier. allowing them to attack multiple systems simultaneously. Captain No Sung-min, commanding the stealth ship Ghost of Busan, had been tracking the Velthari flagship Dominion's Edge for weeks. Using experimental quantum tunneling drives, his ship could appear anywhere in Velthari space within minutes. "Sir, we've located the ship holding Dr. Kim," No reported to Admiral Park. "It's heavily defended and moving toward the capital system. Can you get close enough for a rescue mission?" "Not without risking Dr. Kim's life. The Velthari will kill him before they let us take him back." This was the problem humanity faced. They could destroy the Velthari Empire easily enough, but saving their captured scientist was much harder. Every direct assault risked killing the person they were trying to rescue. Dr. Yang Subin had been working on this problem since the war began. Her solution was typically human. If they couldn't save Dr. Kim with small forces, they would use overwhelming force instead. "Admiral, we're ready to deploy the final weapon," she reported from her laboratory on Luna Base. "What final weapon?" "We've modified our stellar manipulation technology. Instead of just destabilizing stars, we can now sever the quantum bonds that hold matter together. We can make entire fleets simply stop existing." Admiral Park felt a chill run down his spine. "How large an area can it affect?" "The entire capital system, sir. Every ship, every space station, every artificial structure. The planets and the star will remain, but everything else will just disappear." This was beyond warfare. This was the power to erase civilizations with the push of a button. But if that's what it took to bring Dr. Kim home, humanity was ready to use it. The message was broadcast to every Velthari ship and station in the galaxy. Admiral Park's voice carried the weight of an entire species' determination. "Emperor Zulthax, this is your final warning. Return Dr. Kim Tae-ho immediately, or we will erase your capital system from existence. Every ship, every station, every artificial structure in your home system will simply cease to exist. You have 1 hour to decide." On the Dominion's Edge, High Inquisitor Ralthek was running through the corridors toward Dr. Kim's cell. The alien's usual calm demeanor had completely cracked. Fear showed clearly in his glowing eyes. "Human, your people have gone insane!" he shouted as he burst into the cell. "They're threatening to destroy our entire capital system." Tae-ho looked up from where he had been sitting quietly on his sleeping platform. Despite everything that had happened, he seemed strangely calm. "They're not insane. They're just being human. Billions will die. Only if your emperor chooses to let them die. All he has to do is let me go home. This is not rational. No species would risk universal condemnation for one individual." Tae-ho smiled sadly. "You still don't understand, do you? We're not doing this for universal approval. We're doing this because it's right." "Right? Murdering billions is right? We're not murdering anyone. Your emperor is. Every death in this war could have been prevented if he had simply returned me. Every destroyed world, every lost ship, every civilian casualty. It's all because he chose his pride over his people's lives." Ralthek stared at the human prisoner, trying to understand. A mindset that was completely alien to his own species. What makes one life worth so much destruction? Because if one human life isn't worth everything, then no human life is worth anything. And if no human life has value, then we're not human anymore. Before Ralthek could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The Inquisitor's communication device activated, and Commander Velthak's voice filled the cell. "All personnel, the Emperor has ordered a final attack on the human fleet. We are proceeding to the capital system for the decisive battle." Tae-ho shook his head. "He still doesn't get it. There is no decisive battle. There's only the choice: return me or watch everything burn." In the capital system, Emperor Zulthax assembled the largest fleet in Velthari history. Over 5,000 ships surrounded the throne world, ready to defend their empire's heart. It should have been an impressive sight. Instead, it looked pathetic. compared to what humanity had assembled to face them. The human fleet that emerged from quantum tunnels around the capital system was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Massive planet-killer dreadnoughts hung in space like artificial moons. Swarms of AI-controlled fighters moved with perfect coordination. And behind them all, a single ship that looked ordinary but carried the power to erase matter from existence. Captain Kim So-young commanded that ship. She had survived the destruction of Velthos Prime and volunteered for this mission as well. Her orders were simple. If Emperor Zulthax refused to surrender, she would activate the quantum eraser and remove his entire fleet from reality. "Your Imperial Majesty," Admiral Park's voice reached the throne world, "this is your last chance. Return our citizen, and your empire can survive. Refuse, and we will erase you from history." On his throne ship, Emperor Zulthax looked out at the human fleet and finally understood what he was facing. These weren't conquerors or negotiators. They were a rescue mission that had grown into an unstoppable force of nature. But his pride still wouldn't let him surrender. "Attack!" he ordered his fleet. The Velthari ships opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and missiles filled the space between the fleets. But the human response was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Instead of returning fire with conventional weapons, Captain Kim activated the quantum eraser. A wave of nothingness spread out from her ship like ripples on a pond. Where it touched Velthari vessels, they simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone, as if they had never been built. In seconds, 5,000 ships became nothing but empty space. The most powerful fleet in Velthari history had been erased with a single weapon, Emperor Zulthax's throne. Ship survived only because Kim had specifically avoided targeting it. The Emperor found himself alone in space, surrounded by nothingness where his mighty fleet had been. "Emperor Zulthax?" Admiral Park's voice came through his communication. "System, your fleet is gone. Your empire is falling apart. Your people are abandoning you. You have lost everything except the power to end this war. Will you finally return our citizen?" For the first time in his life, the proud Emperor of the Velthari broke. He looked out at the empty space where his fleet had been and realized that his pride had cost him everything. His voice cracked as he spoke. "I surrender." The words echoed through space, heard by every remaining Velthari ship and station. Their emperor, the ruler of 17 star systems, had finally admitted defeat to a species he had dismissed. As primitive, "Return Dr. Kim Tae-ho unharmed," Admiral Park replied, "and we will accept your surrender." On the Dominion's edge, Commander Velthak received the surrender order with relief. The war was finally over. All they had to do was return one human scientist, and the nightmare would end. But even as he prepared to transfer Dr. Kim to the human fleet, Velthak couldn't help but wonder, what kind of species would burn down the galaxy to save one of their own? He was about to find out. Emperor Zulthax himself brought Dr. Kim Tae-ho to Admiral Park's flagship. The once proud ruler of 17 star systems now looked broken and defeated as he walked through the airlock of the Soul's Pride. His elegant blue skin seemed pale, and his glowing eyes had lost their arrogant light. Behind him came Tae-ho, looking tired but unharmed. The scientist had spent weeks as a prisoner, watching an entire empire collapse because they wouldn't let him go home. He felt overwhelmed by the destruction that had been caused in his name. Admiral Park waited in the main docking bay with a full honor guard. As Tae-ho stepped onto the human ship, every sailor present came to attention and saluted. They were honoring not just a rescued prisoner, but the man whose capture had proven to the galaxy what human loyalty really meant. "Dr. Kim," Admiral Park said formally, "welcome home." Tae-ho looked around at the faces of his rescuers, men and women who had risked everything to bring him back. "Admiral, how many people died in this war?" Park's expression grew heavy. "Too many. But every one of them volunteered, knowing what they were fighting for. Fighting for me, Tejo said quietly. Billions of people died because of me. No, Emperor Zulthax spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. They died because of me. Because I was too proud to understand what you tried to tell me. The fallen emperor looked at Admiral Park with something like wonder in his alien eyes. Your species? You really would have destroyed everything, wouldn't you? For one individual? We almost did destroy everything, Park replied. And we would have kept going until we got him back or there was nothing left to destroy. But why? What makes one life worth so much? Tejo answered before the Admiral could speak. Because if one human life doesn't matter, then no human life matters. And if no human life matters, then we're not human anymore. Zulthax stared at the scientist, finally understanding the words that had seemed meaningless weeks ago. Your species sees individual value as the foundation of everything else. That's right. Every human is irreplaceable. Every human is worth saving. Every human deserves to come home. The surrender ceremony took place on the Bridge of the Soul's Pride. Emperor Zulthax formally dissolved the Velthari Empire and placed all former imperial territories under human protection. The terms were absolute and non-negotiable. The Pole. Velthari military will be disbanded, Admiral Park read from the surrender document. All weapons of mass destruction will be turned over to human forces. Former imperial worlds will be allowed to choose their own governments under human oversight. And my people, Zulthax asked, will be protected and allowed to live in peace, as long as they never again threaten human citizens. It was more mercy than the former emperor had expected. After everything that had happened, he had assumed the humans would simply exterminate the Velthari. Instead, they were offering protection and self-determination. Why? He asked. Why show mercy to the species that started this war? Admiral, Park looked at the broken alien leader with something that might have been pity. Because we're not conquerors. We're protectors. The only thing we wanted was our citizen back. Now that we have him, the war is over. As news of the surrender spread, through the galaxy, alien species everywhere began implementing new protocols. The lesson was clear. Humans were not to be threatened, captured, or harmed under any circumstances. Even touching a human citizen was now considered an act of galactic suicide. The Aquari Collective, one of the oldest and most peaceful species in the galaxy, issued a formal statement that became the template for all others. Human citizens are to be treated as mobile weapons of mass destruction. Any hostile action against them will be considered an attack on human civilization and will result in immediate retaliation. Dr. C.O. Jihai, head of Earth's Psychological Warfare Division, prepared humanity's final broadcast to the galaxy. Her message was transmitted to every known alien civilization, ensuring that the lesson of the Velthari War would never be forgotten. People of the galaxy, we are humanity. 3 weeks ago, aliens calling themselves the Velthari Empire captured one of our citizens. They believed we would accept this loss and submit to their authority. They were wrong. The message continued, with calm precision. We have fought a war that destroyed star systems and erased entire fleets from existence. We have demonstrated weapons that can unravel matter itself and turn suns into bombs. We did all of this for one human scientist, and we would do it again for any human citizen. She paused, letting the words sink in across the galaxy. Let this be a lesson to every species that encounters humanity. We are not conquerors, but we are not victims either. We do not seek to rule the galaxy, but we will defend our own with absolute determination. Every human life is precious to us. Every human citizen is worth everything we possess. The broadcast ended with a simple warning that would be remembered for generations. Leave us in peace, and we will leave you in peace. But if you take one of ours, we will take everything from you. Months later, Dr. Kim Tae-ho returned to his research work in the asteroid belts. But the galaxy he worked in had been fundamentally changed. Alien ships now went out of their way to avoid human vessels. Trade negotiations always favored human merchants. Even the most aggressive species spoke politely when dealing with human diplomats. Tae-ho often thought about the cost of his rescue. Entire worlds had been destroyed, billions had died, and a 1,000-year empire had fallen. All because he had been captured while studying rocks in space. Sometimes the weight of it all overwhelmed him. But then he would remember what Admiral Park had told him during the surrender ceremony. "Dr. Kim, you didn't cause this war. Your capture was just the spark. The real cause was a fundamental difference in values. The Velthari saw individuals as expendable. We see them as irreplaceable." The galaxy had learned this lesson the hard way. Human space was now considered inviolate. Human citizens were treated with a respect that bordered on fear, and human protection was sought by species across the galaxy who understood that humanity would fight for others with the same determination they fought for their own. On Earth, in schools and universities, children learned about the Velthari War as an example of human values in action. They learned that their ancestors had been willing to burn down the galaxy to save one scientist they had never met. They learned that being human meant never abandoning anyone, no matter what it cost. The story became a cautionary tale told by alien parents to their children. Never hurt a human, for they are never truly alone. Behind every human stands an entire species that will stop at nothing to protect their own. Years passed, and the galaxy settled into a new normal. Trade flourished between species that now understood the cost of aggression. Peaceful exploration replaced territorial conquest. And at the center of it all, humanity stood as both protector and example. Dr. Kim Tae-ho, the man whose capture had changed everything, continued his quiet work among the asteroids. He was just one human studying rocks in the vast emptiness of space. But every alien ship that passed him by knew the truth. He was worth everything to the species that called him their own, and that made all the difference in the galaxy. The lesson was clear and would be remembered forever. Humanity doesn't negotiate with those who threaten their people. They don't compromise on the value of human life, and they never ever leave anyone behind, because that's what it means to be human.